communities.
Now, Fox News contributor Robert Jeffress is a senior pastor at the First Baptist Church in Dallas, just blocks from the scene of the attack. How can we bridge this divide?
Well, I think there are two things that churches can do and should be doing right now. One is to engage in public displays of support for the police. 2 months ago, our church had a Back the Blue Sunday in which we honored the Dallas Department. We had hundreds of police officers present. Chief Brown was there. We recognized him, and he was so appreciative of the effort because he said, frankly, they don't get a lot of thanks for what they do. But I think equally important is for ministers and churches to instill in their members a respect for the police. You know, the New Testament says in Romans 13:4 that law enforcement officers are ministers of God, sent by God to punish evildoers. When you think about it, police officers are just as called by God to do what they do as pastors and priests are called by God. And I think we need to remind our members of that. And frankly, I'm getting very sick and tired of so-called ministers who do nothing but sow seeds of distrust and disrespect for the police. Those kind of bogus ministers need to be exposed and need to be called out for what they're doing. We ought to be supporting police, not creating distrust for police.
Seems like there's a lot of those ministers, Pastor. I noticed there's a lot of support in the Episcopal Church, Methodist, Presbyterian, the old line Protestant churches for Black Lives Matter, and some even of the more lunatic groups out there. Why is that?
Well, I think right now, I think most people recognize that police officers, the vast majority, do a tremendous job and that they're here to protect us. And that, yes, there are some police officers that maybe engage in overreaction, but that's infinitesimal compared to the good police officers out there today. And I believe most people recognize that. And I believe it's time for us to be celebrating our police officers and not condemning them.
Yeah, and your church is just a few blocks away from where the shooting happened in Dallas. This has to hit close to home for you, and a lot of people, I'm sure, will be going to church, not just where you are, but across the country, trying to find some sense of comfort, some sort of understanding as to how this all happened. From churches, they're also wanting to hear from their political leaders. When you look at our next president, who it will be, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, who do you think has the right message to bring this country together, to send this message of unity that we're all wanting right now?
Look, it's no secret that I'm a strong supporter of Donald Trump. I serve on his Faith Advisory Council. I believe he has the leadership to stop the downward spiral of this nation. But having said that, I think it's time today and over the next few days for us to lay partisan politics aside. And whether we're Republicans, Democrats, or Independents, I believe we need to come together and pray for our leaders as well as pray for God's healing for our nation.
The president is speaking in Warsaw, Poland yesterday, talking about the need for crossing this divide. Has the president missed an opportunity during his 8 years as president to bridge that divide? He was supposed to be this post-racial president when he was running, and I think there was this sense of optimism across this country. But we've seen massive violence in cities like Chicago and Baltimore.
I think he has. My own opinion is that President Obama has exacerbated the racial divide instead of healing it. And you saw that in Warsaw before the Dallas tragedy when he only gave one side of this whole issue of police injustice. And I think if the fact is 99% of police officers are good, hardworking, decent people, they ought to receive the bulk of the president's praise. And I'm afraid the president, just like he did with conservative Christians, after the beheading by ISIS of Christians, it seemed like he wanted to blame conservative Christians in the past for atrocities instead of putting the blame where it belongs. And you know, I have to say this, if we would teach our children to respect law enforcement officers, they wouldn't have anything to worry about.
Yeah.
You know, the Bible says law enforcement officers nothing to be feared if you do what is right.
Yeah, we'll have to leave it there. It's a great message, Pastor Jeffress. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Pastor.
More Fox and Friends coming up.